Welcome back to Marine's World, everyone, and I've got a lovely project for you today. I've been making a new pinwheel for my Hussif, just so it's more in keeping with what I've made, and I just decided I needed a proper change. So the little pinwheel has worked out really well, and I hope you'll enjoy making something similar for your own needlebook, Hussif, housewife, needle roll, whatever you want to call it, it's the same. It's a lovely sewing kit for those of us who sew all the time and need to carry our things with us wherever we go. I hope you enjoy it. Today's tutorial is how to make the pinwheel that I have sewn into my Hussif. And this one was actually done, the embroidery was done after a pattern from an old book that's no longer in print now, but you can definitely get them second hand. It's called Elizabethan Needlework Accessories. By making a little pinwheel, all the points are actually away inside it. So first of all, I have used one of my jar lids to just draw around the size of what I want my pinwheel to be, and I've cut two pieces out of cardboard. Now this cardboard is, I would say this is thicker than a cereal box, so you need something a bit thicker, or if you had cereal box you could use two pieces together to give the thickness, because you do need a little bit of sturdiness. I've then taken my material I'm going to embroider on, and this is just a bit of vintage cotton, and I've drawn round one of them just softly with a pencil, and I've just given myself a rose petal design that I'm going to embroider today. I'm actually going to embroider it with some crewel wool. This is actually vintage crewel wool, and I think I need a gold, a yellow, and I have 3 different shades of pink here from dark to light. So I'm going to do a bit of long and short crewel embroidery. I didn't actually have any cream or white in my vintage supplies, but I have got this, which is actually cotton. It's candle wicking cotton, and I think that'll easily go in with this crewel wool. The other things you need are something to stuff your pinwheel. I have a bit of wool out of a pillow, but I also just think that a bit of old jumper will do just as well. Okay, I'm ready to stitch. I've got a single strand of my old crewel wool in quite a long needle, but it's got a sharp point because this fabric needs it. And I've drawn on just 5 petals and a centre, but I've kept it right within my outer edge. And I'm going to do each petal at a time. However, I'd like it to be a little bit raised up, and so what I'm going to do is just stitch around the edge with a back stitch actually. And not only is this outlining the pattern on my fabric, but when I stitch over it, it'll just give that extra little bit of padding, which is going to make my rose look really nice. I'm just holding my hand up underneath to give that a little bit of stretch to the fabric, which is enabling me to do the stitch in one pass. But you could just stab up and down if you wanted to. I don't actually want to take this underneath edging anywhere further down. I want the petal to actually be raised up towards the edge and flat in the middle. And so I'm actually going to take that back round with another row of stitching. This time I'm just stem stitching back, and it's just the fact that it's easier for my hand to be sewing from left to right, and these stitches are hidden, so it doesn't matter that one's back stitch and one's stem stitch. You could just as easily be doing it with running stitch. It's all there just to give a little bit of padding underneath. And I think that's all I need to do on that one. I'm actually going to go and do every one like that. just inside my drawn line, because I'm aware that I can't make the flower any larger than it is really. And I'm just changing from back stitch to stem stitch as it's easier for me to do. If it wasn't in the hoop in front of the camera, I'd probably do all of it in stem stitch. I'll come back when I've got all 5 done. So I've completed all of the understitching. So I'm going to do long and short. And people get worried about what angle the stitches are going to go or where to change the colours. And it's not really as complicated as you might think. I've got a middle going on here which I want to keep free of the petal stitches for the moment. But if you think about how a petal grows, everything is going to radiate out from the middle. And so as long as I keep that in mind when I'm stitching, that all the angles of the stitches are going to radiate from the middle outwards, and that every time you lay a stitch in, you're going to aim it right for the middle. That'll keep the stitches right. As for colour, you can just put yourself a guide on if you want and say that bit's going to be pink, that bit's going to be the next colour, and then maybe I just want 1, 2, 3 colours, and I've actually got 1, 2, 3. I've actually got 4 colours, but there might be too many. So you can do that because it's all going to be covered up, so it doesn't matter that you're drawing on that. That's a way of keeping yourself thinking about where the colours are going to change. And the other thing I would say is, especially if you're doing a petal or a leaf, is not to start at one edge and attempt to work all the way round. Start in the middle and work each way out. So I've come up on the other side of on the outside edge of those back stitches there, and I'm going to bring the first stitch in straight down towards the middle. Now if I was going to start filling them in all really close together, it's easy to get the stitches going a bit wayward. So I'm actually going to hop along about, well, less than 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to put a bit of a shorter stitch in, but I'm still going to angle it towards the middle. And I can pull my thread down towards the middle and see where it's going to go and put that next stitch in. And I'll go a bit further along. So at the moment we're putting something in that's going to help get everything else in. And you don't have to be regularly doing it like a brick. It can be various lengths of stitches. So some are longer, some are shorter. They're all going to go in with each other. So can you see the angle? If I pull that to the middle, that's a big different angle from where that stitch was. But that's the one I'm going to do. And then I'm going to go back up onto the other side, and I'm going to do exactly the same. Going to bring my thread down as if it's going to the middle and just put a shorter stitch in there. And I'm on the outside of the back stitches, my understitching, because that's what's going to help make that edge look a bit raised up. Bring that one down into there, and I'll get the last one of these on, and then I'll put a new thread in. And I'll get the last one of these on, and then I'll put a new thread in. I'm going to start again at the middle, right in the middle of the petal. And I'm going to start and do the long and short. So I'm going to do a short one there, but now I've got my first layer of stitches actually showing me what angle to put them all in. And so I'll fill down one side and then fill down the other side. And some are going to come down. There's no point taking them all the way because I know that's going to end up being cream or white or whatever colour. I'll put a short one in. And I'm just trying to go the width of the thread away from each other. So on here I can see that that's where I need to lie it. It's going to come right down towards this one. I've put a short one in. I'm actually going to go shorter, because obviously the outer perimeter is your longest length. It needs more stitches than the middle does. But this next stitch, hopefully, is going to go further inwards. Bring the stitch down, take it right in, take it a bit further altogether. And in this way I can work every petal, get its edging in, and as you can see I'm totally covering up those under stitches. They'll just give a slight raising up of the edge. So I'm back up to the top, and you've got more chance of letting your stitches lie in a good way by completing each half separately. This crewel wool is actually quite fine. There's a big difference between vintage crewel wool and what you can get now, I think. Although I haven't bought any for so long, the only one I can compare it to though is my Appleton wools, which I have from a few years ago. And my pink is not going to go as far down as this, but you sort of need that length so that you can put the other stitches in among it. I'm happy with that petal, so I'm going to move on to this petal here, and I am just going to string it across the back because it's not very far. I'm only going from there to here. So again, I'm going to put the framework in first, and I'm going to go along, angling every stitch towards the middle to give a framework for easy stitching once you've done it. And once you just start to think of the stitch lines as being the veins in the petal, or the fur of an animal, or the wings, the feathers of a bird, the way that they lie, you can look at a photograph online, look at a photograph you might have taken, see the angle that everything's growing or lying in, and that's your cue to what angle your stitches need to be. There's some Appleton crewel wool, which is beautiful to sew, but look at the difference. There's quite a big difference there. It's about twice the thickness. So if you're using a modern wool, it won't take you as long as me with this fine stuff, but I do really like this fine stuff. It's very satisfying. And of course you could do this just as easily with stranded cotton. So I'd be thinking that on here maybe 2 strands or 3 strands of stranded cotton would look beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to finish the edges of all 5 petals. And I've decided I don't really have enough room to put 4 colours in because I want the middle to be this creamy white. So I'm going to miss that very pale one off and just use the next shade down, because I'd rather the shades were quite close together. So I've got a single strand of this next shade. And to do the second row, it's sort of, sometimes it's easier to work up into the work you've already done. You've got the angles of the stitches already there, so that should be easier. And you don't have to match every stitch up. You just have to go up into the work and you can really alter the effects. If I was just going to go, I can see that there's a stitch there and there's a little gap here. So if I just went to there, then I'm going to have quite a big pink edge, and I don't actually want that big pink edge. I just need it to come in so that I can make everything else look nice. I'm going to take my thread up into that stitch. So in essence, I'm splitting the stitch that's there. And I'm going to keep coming back, sort of working down towards the middle. And again, the stitches are going to lie on the line as if they were coming from the middle anyway. And I'll take my needle right up into that pink. So you shouldn't really end up seeing a hard line. You just see a gradual shading. And you won't need as many stitches here because there's less of the petal to cover. So I've just worked downwards on that one, and I just sort of work back and forward. Again, you don't have to do all of them at this, you don't have to work around in a certain direction. You go where the stitch needs to go. And so some will be short and some will be long, but I am working quite a way up into that dark pink edge because it's the transition that I want to be gradual. I don't want it to look hard at all. As I say, I'm going to just work into the pink edge. A shorter stitch here, a longer stitch there, wherever it needs to go. Hope this is helpful. I think some people think, how do you know how to lie the stitches? But you just keep thinking in your mind, it's a petal. Think of how the petal grows. Have a photograph of a rose petal or a pansy petal or whatever it is that you're working on. If that makes it more helpful, you'll be able to see the veins of the flowers. That's what you're following. And I can always go around again. It's not like you have to just think that's it done. If you get all of the petals done and then all of a sudden you think, oh, I need an extra stitch in there, just put it in. Nobody's stopping that happening. You work it how it best fits you to work it. For me, I like to go sometimes up into the previous row, and sometimes I work down from it. It just depends how I feel I want the stitch to lie. Then again, I'm not trained at all, so I might not be doing it the proper way. I've just learned from being a child. There's nobody ever, well, nobody's ever seen me do it, I suppose. So nobody's ever said I was doing it wrong. So you're just extending the colour further down each petal to wherever it is you think that colour should end. You need to be a little bit past where you think it should end. That's the point. So that enables you to get the next colour in together. So I'm creeping further down towards the middle every time. It's the interplay between the different shades of stitch that makes the gradation of colour work. I always think I'm on the last stitch and then I end up getting one more in. And so now I'm going to put this, and this is a bit thicker, but I'm hoping it's just going to work fine. So I'm going to come up just around this circle. I might go a little bit further in. I did want to do stamens in the middle. And I'm just going to lie some of these cream stitches are going to go right up towards the dark pink, and some of them will just go into the light pink. They're all eventually going to come back down to the circle. And I'm going to actually work all of the petals together and just keep going round, thickening it up all the time, and just bringing the whole flower together at the same time now. Actually, this candle wicking yarn is actually working really well. But it's cotton as opposed to the wool. I think I'll just finish this off. I'll leave that thread hanging there. I've got gold in my needle now. I'm just going to come up and intersperse some darker French knots. So 2 wraps down to the fabric, pull through. I'll just put them in the spaces. Like that. As long as you're keeping hold of your yarn until as long as you're keeping hold of your thread until the French knot's almost finished, you shouldn't have any problem. You make the knot at the fabric, push your needle down and hold on here. If you let go too early, that's when you'll start to get a bit of a loose French knot. Sometimes loose French knots are just fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I do hear people say they have problems with them. I've filled in that as much as I would like to with this dark, but I actually would like a row of longer knots on the stamens, and to do that I'm going to do what's called pistol stitch, which actually just means it's a French knot on the end of a line. So I'm going to wrap for a French knot, but instead of putting my needle back down there, I'm going to give it a stalk and pull the needle down at the end of the stalk, and what I get is a French knot on a stick. I'll do that again. French knot, and instead of right back down at the bottom, I'm going to just pull it somewhere else, and I get the little line and a French knot at the end of it. I'm going to do some short ones and some long ones. Maybe I'll just do 1 wrap actually, see what that looks. I think that's better actually. 1 wrap. Going to go around, and then I'll do some with the yellow as well. Some short, some long. So I'll make some yellow pistol stitches. So 1 wrap out on a stalk, hold as for a French knot, so the knot's getting made at the fabric, and pull down. And I'll go around and make some long ones and some short ones. Here I've actually finished my rows off just with the chain stitch leaf or a sepal in each intersection. I just put a chain stitch in, and then the chain stitch looked open, so I carried on and just did a straight stitch down the middle of it. So that made an extra bit of colour there, and I've gone and drawn around my circle to do the back, and I've just put my bow and arrow and 24 for this year and a bit of running stitch around the end. And it just made me think that if you didn't want to do this sort of a more traditional flower embroidery, this would look beautiful with a blanket stitch spiral on, if you wanted to do something more slow stitching, or it could be anything. But I'm now going to cut these out with a bit of an excess around the edge and go on to the actual making up of the little pinwheel. I've cut my pieces out. Make sure you give a good inch even of excess fabric, because the fabric's going to be turned round and laced, and you can always cut it shorter, but if you cut it too short you're sort of stuck. So make sure you give plenty of leeway around the edge. And I want to just pad the top as well. I could use felt, but I've actually just got a bit of wool here. So I'm going to cut around my cardboard. I don't want any of the wool to be going over the edge of it to make the embroidery a bit funny. So there's one. So now I need a strong thread. I'm just going to use something out of my tangle. It's a bit shiny, but it'll do perfectly. And now we're going to lace this as tight as possible. You have to be careful at the beginning because you need to keep everything centered. So if I take my top, I'm going to put my flower on there. I'm just going to start, and I'm not going to go through the edge, just going to pick up a fold, and I'm going to go straight across the other side and pick up another fold. Now don't pull it too tight because you need to make sure that your embroidery is going to be centered. And I think if you pull it too tight, you just have no wiggle room. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to there. Make sure you're picking up the little fold of fabric well in from your edge, or else you'll just shred the edge. And then I'm going to go straight over to the quadrant, so the other 90-degree angle, and pick up that as well. And now you'll be able to get a sense of whether your embroidery is in the right place. So this is the time to just do a little bit of folding and looking to see whether you need to pull anything anyway at all. I think I'm quite happy with where that is. So I will start to just tighten things up. So I'll pull that a little more than I did, and I'll go to these points. And I'm not going to just go through and take it there. I'm actually going to go from the top and take a fold, take a little bite of that fabric, and come straight over to the opposite one, take a little bite of fabric, and I'll go to that one, and then I have another check. There's no point going ahead if things are all skew with. Okay, I think it looks perfectly fine there. My blanket hasn't slipped. I've got a good edge where the cardboard is, so I think I can go ahead and just start pulling everything in. So now I'm going to start and put tension on, and I'm going to go now to every piece that I haven't done already. You can still smooth the fabric from the front if you want, but once you actually have what you feel is a good shape, you don't need to pull it anymore. Just overcast and finish off. One more check. Yep. Finish. I'm just going to overcast that off, and I'm going to do exactly the same with the back. So there's that one. So they're now both stretched and absolutely tied tightly together. Just cut that off. And they're ready to be put together. And as you can see, if I put them like that, there's a gap. Well, you want that gap because that's where the pins are going to fit, but you need to cover it up. On my original, I have gold ribbon there, just hem stitched in. And I actually did get a bit of pink ribbon out to think that I would do the same and sew the pink ribbon in like that, which would be perfectly lovely. Whatever it is that you do use, you need it that the pins are going to push through easily. So you could use ribbon. I've decided to do a bit of needle lace because I thought it would look nice. So what I've actually done is I've backstitched in from the edge all the way round. It's about a 1/4 inch backstitch. and I've got a double length of my crewel wool in the needle, and I'm just going to start my thread coming up like that. And what I'm actually going to do is blanket stitch around into every back stitch that I've put. I'm not going to pull it too tight, but all I am doing is blanket stitching. It is simple. You're not even going through the fabric, and what you will get is a little blanket stitch that's sticking up from the background, and it's as easy as that to go around. I'll try and hold it better for you so you can see where I'm going. Just every single back stitch I've got, I'm going to do a blanket stitch round, not pulling them really tight. If I feel as if it's stretching it over a bit, I'll put two blanket stitches into it. It's not a concern. So there, I think, oh, I'll put an extra one in there. So I do, and then just carry on round. You could use a blunt crewel wool needle for this. I'm not bothering because I know I can just manage, but you don't have to put a point on your needle like I've got here. It's just I haven't bothered to change needles. I'm just going to go all the way around. Now I got all the way around, and you can see there's like a little ridge because I didn't go through the fabric. I just went through the back stitch, and I've started my second round, and I've changed my needle to a blunt point crewel wool needle. And all I need to do now is keep going through the tops of the blanket stitches that I've already done and doing another one. Nothing harder than that. Don't pull tight, just leave them exactly the way they sort of go down, and you'll know that you're not leaving them loose, but you're not pulling them tight. And if you can see, there's the little ridge of my first one, and here's my second go around. I've actually got about 1/4 of an inch there. So I think probably 3 go rounds will be enough, but you can keep practicing it. You can just look, you can put your things together and think, is that enough or not? That could be enough on 2 rounds, but I think I'll be doing 3. And so it absolutely is as easy as you holding your thread, go to the next blanket stitch, you're not going through any fabric, and you do another blanket stitch and just carry on going round, and you'll build up that little needle lace edge. This is the simplest type of needle lace you could do. Now you will see that it sort of lies in flat, and that's because this bit's under tension and this bit isn't, but if you push it, it'll just stand up nicely. So that's nothing to worry about. I definitely am going to go around for a 3rd time. So I've finished my little needle lace wall. So now I need to come and put this one on. I think I just need to, I've changed back to a sharp point because I'm going through the fabric. Going to start there, come up through the fabric, and I'm just going to loop around onto there to just start them off being able to be put together. So I'm just going to lace between the fabric, and I am about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge. I don't want to be on the very edge, and I'm going to pick up a bit of my needle lace, and I think I should do every stitch, so I'm going to do it quite close together. And you see what I'm doing? I'm going to lace back and forward, picking up one of my blanket stitch loops, and then back down to here, and then every so often I'll pull it like that, and then I'll have it sewn together. So I maybe need to get about halfway round and then start to put the stuffing in. So I'm going to pick up the loop, pick up some fabric, just a tiny bit of fabric, doesn't have to be much, I definitely could have backstitched this first and then I could have just gone through the loops, but I think this is working just as good. And then pull it in, move around the next bit of fabric, the next loop. My fingers, and that bit of orange wants to be in. My fingers there just helping be a spacer so I can see what I'm doing. And all of your fabric stitches need to be about the same distance in from the edge. I think this is definitely easier than putting the ribbon on, probably. And I'll do a few stitches and then I'll pull it tight. I'm going to carry on and do more than that before I start to put stuffing in. And the more that gets done, the easier it actually gets, because you've got some stability, whereas at the beginning it's all quite wobbly. Right, I think it's at this point I probably need to put my stuffing in while I've still got room to put it. So, I do have this bit of wool here. I think wool's quite a good stuffing for pins to go in. I'm just going to use my pencil to push it in. And if I didn't have that bit of loose wool, I would have just cut that into snips and pushed that in. I don't want to press things too much, so just keep having a check, see that it's going the way you want. That looks quite fine to me though. It's making a nice edging, that. I'm going to want to swap it for my old one. I'll carry on and see how it goes. I'll just keep looping and fabric, loop and fabric. Maybe I could have got away with just 2 rows, you know. But it's fine. I'm actually going to go all the way around again to make sure that it's all secure, and this time I'm just sort of going to hem stitch it in as a way of finishing off. And then I will cut my thread. Oh, and that's my pinwheel done. Pinwheel's done. Got some pins. The pins just go straight in like that, and you can, as long as you do your edge, your little needle lace or your ribbon in from the edge, it means the heads of the pins are buried within the 2 sides, and so they're not sticking out like that. If you did this bit here right on the edge, your pin heads would be out. But by doing it in, and you can take quite a lot of pins in here, and it's a good way of putting them in your work bag or your needle book or your Hussif or whatever. And yeah, I like it, and I hope you like it too. Well, that came out well. I'm really pleased with it, and I'm going to be sewing myself a new scissors case, because I do have some different embroidery scissors that I'd actually like to be in there, and they're a little bit long for that old scissors case that I had, and so hopefully I'll be bringing a scissors case tutorial within the next couple of weeks, and so that'll be another accessory for my Hussif. In the meantime, I thought I'd show you how I'm getting on with my knitting. It came to a stop a little bit while I was hand sewing my dress, but it is coming on beautifully. And so I've finished the colour work part here, and I'm up to the main body of the cardigan, which is still colour work, but it's just in like 2 shades of grey. There's a dark charcoal and a paler grey, and it's not very obvious at the moment, but I think that's going to really make a nice subtle body for the cardigan. So anyway, it is coming along, and I'm going to be taking that with me to do when I go away to Birmingham next week to the Sewing for Pleasure show. For somebody who works with mainly thrifted fabric that doesn't cost very much at all, I get surrounded by all this amazing colour and new fabric, and some of it is just so out of my price range. I just ooh and ah at it and feel it and think, if only. But in the end, I do quite like crafting with my thrifted treasures, and the point is you never know what you're going to get when you're thrifting for fabric, and so you have to be a bit more creative, I think, than just going out and buying new fabric. With all that said, I'll be going out and I will be buying new fabric. I don't know what, because I don't actually have a project in mind, but if I see something beautiful, I've saved up my pennies and I'm bound to come back with something. I'll be showing you all what I get. And in the meantime, thank you to everybody, all your comments. The Kawandi style dress is definitely getting a lot of love on my YouTube channel. It's had a lot of people looking at it, and I've had some lovely comments about it. So thank you for that. I'm pleased you all liked it, because I did wonder whether it was just me that would like wearing some colourful sort of dress. I have been wearing it and it's so nice to wear. The skirt hangs so lovely. I've got a feeling I'll be making another one. And while you're watching this, I'm probably going to be making the curtain dress, but that'll be on the machine. So I'm hoping to just be running that up on Sunday afternoon, I think. Yeah, I think so. Thank you to all my supporters on the Ko-fi page, on your comments, on the lovely things you say, the super thanks, just everything. And even on Instagram, which I am on, I get messages from people and it's so lovely, and thank you for that as well. And with all I've done, I'm just going to say thank you for your visit to Marion's World. I hope you come back and see something else, or have a look at another video and see what else I do. And in the meantime, thank you for everyone, and bye bye for now. Happy stitching.